Hello, welcome to Only for Your Ears, and welcome to the 8th episode, The Little Mermaid, which I've renamed as A Magical Sacrifice Under the Sea. The structure will be the same as usual, starting off with the summary and highlighting the most important points. Then we'll continue with a critical review on how the storyline plays in today's society. And to finish with, we'll continue with the trigger points to the very end. Thank you. I also like to say thank you to all the people that have been tuning in and visiting the site, my YouTube channel, and also listening. And I'd like to apologize for the delay in this week's episode due to illness again. Thank you very much. Let's begin. A magical sacrifice from under the sea. Well, to begin with, we'll start off with where this actually takes place. And the title tells you already, From Under the Sea, a magical sacrifice from under the sea. We're going to look at the under the sea world. This takes place just under the surface of the sea, where there's a magical kingdom of beautiful foliage, greenery, fishes, and at last we find the paradise of a castle that a king is living there along with his mother and his 6 children. And it's the grandmother that's taking care of the children. And in this palace or in this castle, the Little Mermaid lives. Let's begin. The king was a widower for a long time, so his mother helped him run the castle. She was a smart woman, proud of her inheritance. She loved her grandchildren above all, and she had 6 of them. The youngest one was the prettiest one of all. She had beautiful skin and blue eyes. They spent most of their time in the garden where they had a special place, and the youngest one circled her so that she would remind her of the sun. I digress here. What a beautiful imagery. The Little Mermaid was no ordinary girl. She was shy, unlike her sisters, and she loved a marble statue of a boy that had sunk to the bottom after a shipwreck. I digress. The shipwreck at the bottom of the sea, could this be a foretelling of the Titanic less than a century before? The princess planted a plant near the statue that complemented it perfectly. The biggest joy for her was always the telling of stories about people and their habits, ships and cities. The Little Mermaid found the flowers that smelled, the green trees and the birds most interesting. The grandma promised them that they will be able to come out to the surface and observe the ships from a rock. They always told stories about what they saw to one another. Nobody wanted to get to the outer world more than the youngest. The first one told how she lay on the sand, and the other one how she saw the sunset. The third was brave, and she started swimming near the river and saw beautiful castles and hills. The fourth wasn't all that brave, and the fifth one wants out during the winter, so she saw the world from an iceberg. When the Little Mermaid turned 15, she could finally enjoy the fresh air, and she observed a ship and that hosted a party. She saw a young man with black eyes. The party was his birthday. The time had passed by, and the Little Mermaid observed the party until a storm came by. The waves were getting higher and higher, and people were panicking. Unfortunately, the prince fell into the sea, and the Little Mermaid rushed to save him. so he wouldn't be drowned. I digress. And this brave little mermaid comes to rescue her Prince Charming. She got him to the land and placed him near a church where she kissed him and rushed to the sea because somebody was coming. Soon he was surrounded by beautiful girls and he did not know who saved him. So he smiled at all of them, and that made the little mermaid sad. She got sadder as the days passed on, and soon she told her sisters everything. They helped her find the prince so she could observe him every day. I digress. The little mermaid wanted to appear humble and magnanimous with all her sisters around, but felt jealous that the prince was so smitten with all the attention he received without realizing it was the youngest mermaid who rescued him. She was getting attracted to human life, and even though her grandma tried to explain that her under the sea life is amazing, she craved the land. She decided to search for help at an old witch's house that was guarded by snakes. Even though she was afraid, she kept going with her plan. I digress. She was persuaded to try a new life because of the prince. The plan to see the witch surrounded by snakes sounds ominous to me. The witch spoke to the mermaid and she told her she came to the right place because she had a perfect potion for her. Unfortunately, the witch did not work for free. The mermaid would get her legs, and with every step she'd take, she'd feel enormous pain, and she and she has to convince the prince that she is the one for him because if she fails, she will turn into foam. Oh my goodness. The little mermaid agreed and lost her voice. The witch wanted her voice, her beautiful, incredible voice. That's what she wanted to. She wanted everything. I digress. This witch doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound good at all. She doesn't have good intentions. And she wanted everything, everything, every special, distinctive thing of the mermaid. After she came to land, she drank the potion and she felt a lot of pain, passed out, and after she woke up, the prince was next to her. The problem was she couldn't introduce herself to him. He helped her get up and took her to the castle where she got the prettiest dresses. Every day they were entertained by some girls, but neither one of them had the pretty voice of the little mermaid. I digress. This is why the witch wanted her voice. Take it away. So the little mermaid was robbed herself of receiving the kudos again. The prince doesn't recognize his rescuer, and now the sweet voice that is so different and intoxicated has been diminished. The very special trait that made her different, she gave up, she abandoned it. The one night she saw the sisters and she talked to them. They were really sad that she left them. And in the distance, she saw the grandma and dad. The prince loved her more and more every day, but not as a future wife, but as a child. How unfortunate. He admitted to her that he likes her, and she reminded him of the girl that saved him. I digress again. What a pity. The prince loved her just the way she was, and the little mermaid felt she had to change who she was in order to please and be loved by the prince. What a dichotomy here. One day, she went to another castle with the prince, even though he spent a lot of time talking to the princess. He told her that he would never get married to her because he needs the girl that saved him. I digress again. This is heartbreaking, but there is a very tough lesson to learn from this. Everything changed when a new princess arrived. She reminded him so much of the girl who saved him that he decided to marry her. The mermaid knew she would die the next day, so she decided to spend her last night dancing on the boat. She saw her sisters cut their hair. They told her that they gave their hair to the witch so that she wouldn't have to die the next day. She got a knife and she was supposed to stab the prince with it. This was an evil witch with it. And as soon as the blood would drop onto her feet, she would turn into a mermaid and she would live for 300 years. I digress again, people. She'd returned back to the original mermaid that she escaped from in order to win the heart of a human that didn't even recognize who she was. This is a big lesson about not forsaking who you are as a person for no one. When she approached the prince, she wasn't strong enough to kill him, so she knew she she threw away the knife and jumped into the sea. She was waiting for her death. She talked to the fairies, and they told her that a mermaid can only be immortal if she finds her soulmate. The little mermaid finally raised to the world of the ghosts, saw the prince for the last time, and went towards the clouds. I digress. This is a case of unrequited love, like two ships passing in the night. What a beautiful story. Let's continue with my critical review. I believe this story is about unrequited love, as I just mentioned, and the little mermaid needs to forsake who she is to win the love of the man of her dreams. Well, that's what she feels that she needs to do, but in actual reality, she didn't need to do that. In terms of how it plays in society, the narrative is playing with the sacrificial lamb for a person who didn't who we don't really know well enough, but we're afraid won't accept us for who we are. There's a feeling of an imposter syndrome here. You know when you meet someone that's too good to be true and you feel they couldn't possibly like us for who we are. That is an awful shame. Continue. So you decide to transform yourself into a person you think your crush wants. There's a really hard lesson that teaches us that we are good enough in our entirety, just the way we were born. We don't have to change. If we have to change to please somebody else for them to accept us, then they're not worth it. Enough. In who we are without metaphorically changing ourselves through plastic surgery to get our crush to love us, a desperate act of passive aggression and manipulation. Let's take a look at the story with some of the sentences. The little mermaid was unlike her sisters, and she loved a marble statue of a boy that sunk to the bottom of uh, that sunk to the bottom after a shipwreck. I digress. A shipwreck at the bottom of the sea. Could this be a foretelling of the Titanic less than a century before? I can see the Little Mermaid was definitely the black sheep of the family. Nobody likes being the black sheep of the family. Everybody stares at you as if to say, where do you come from? You don't fit in. You're not part of this family. I think she desperately wanted to fit in, so she wouldn't feel different. The boy, the statue that she befriends, basically, is a symbol of romance, a love for the Little Mermaid, and somebody to adore and create stories with. The shipwreck reminds me of the Titanic with Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. However, the Little Mermaid sacrifices herself for her prince from a creative narrative. It's certainly different from most fairy tales. The mermaid gets to play the superhero. I believe this is why the prince feels he can't marry anyone else except his rescuer. It's the idea of reciprocating and saving one's life with an everlasting love, respect, and total appreciation for what the Little Mermaid did. I wonder how many times we have fallen in love with someone that rescued us or that we thought fixed us. The idea that you risked your life because you thought I was worth saving. The statue that she took from the bottom of the sea is an earlier rescue, which she honors with a plant like, showing respect to the boy's life too. Okay, beautiful part. Okay, number two. Now, this reminds me of a film. She was persuaded to try a new life because she had fallen in love with the prince. The plan to see the witch surrounded by snakes sounds ominous to me. Anyone outside ourselves that persuades us to make a drastic change in our life, it's a bit weary. And that rings of desperation, which is what the mermaid felt. I think she felt desperate. And she felt desperate not because she felt desperate because the prince didn't recognize her as being the one that rescued him, especially as all her sisters were surrounding him. And so he didn't know who it was, or he couldn't remember who it was. So she felt she had to take a desperate measure and do something to stand out. So this is what she did. And this reminds me of a film called The Mirror Has Two Faces with Barbara Streisand and Jeff Bridges. And a quick explanation, really. Barbara Streisand is a teacher, a brilliant teacher, a lecturer at Columbia University. And Jeff Bridges is also is a mathematician who's written a book and is also a teacher at Columbia University. Well, Barbara Streisand lives with her narcissistic mother, who's very abusive and is very self-absorbed, and is in the process of always trying to date several different men so she can at least have some kind of a love life separate from having to deal with her narcissistic mother sucking all the air out of the relationship. Then her sister, who's absolutely perfectly manicured, attractive, but perfectly manicured. And Barbara Streisand's character is not perfectly manicured. She's just normal with a little overweight, but just normal. Anyway, she's asked to answer an ad in a newspaper about this professor who is looking for basically a plain looking woman. He has an addiction to sexy, beautiful model women, and he can't help himself. But what he wants is to get married and have a real relationship. And he decides, look, let me marry somebody who's a plain Jane. So they match them up, and she answers the advertisement. So they go out and they start dating, and he has a great time with her. He sees her as a really good friend, like a best friend, but he does not see her as lover material, which is fine for him, but it's not fine for her. Anyway, they get married, and it's great. Well, it's great for him because he's able to hide behind the fact that he does not want to deal with his addiction, and he doesn't want to deal with Barbara Streisand, the real woman. He's a frightened boy. And for Barbara Streisand's character, she's not satisfied at all. She wants a real man and to love her and to love her as who she is, not for having to make any big transformations. Anyway, one night, just before he goes off to Europe to sell his book and to promote it, she starts to try and seduce him. And this is when he gets really angry with her. And she confronts him and calls him a frightened little boy that doesn't want to make love to his wife. And she leaves the house and she comes back, and her narcissistic mother, of course, is gloating and is very, very happy with the fact that she's come back. She goes, I told you you would come back because he never really loved you. And she loves the whole idea. So she comes back home and she stays there, and she decides to go on a diet to lose some weight. Now she doesn't want to transform drastically. She just wants to just tone her body and just be an enhanced version of who she really is, to bring out the best features that she has. And so she loses the weight. She looks absolutely incredible. Even her sister is like jealous of her because she looks so great. And she's, sort of teases her and says, look, you'll see all the pressure is going to be on you now to look beautiful. Well, she cooks her husband a meal when he returns home, and he sees her and he goes absolutely insane. He says, you are not the woman I married. So she decides to leave him and go out and enjoy herself. And men that saw her as a friend are now attracted to her. Men that once saw her as a friend are now attracted to her because she looks so beautiful. Now she has transformed, but she's just transformed into a better version of herself. She hasn't transformed like the Little Mermaid wanted to transform, and that is have legs instead of having a tail as a mermaid. So he realizes that he truly, truly loves Barbara Streisand's character, and that he has always been sexually attracted to her, but he didn't want the sex to get in the way because that was his problem. He had an addiction to women and sex, especially beautiful women. So he gets back together with her. He says, I really love you, and you are a beautiful, gorgeous woman, and I want to be with you. So this is a perfect situation that happens in the film, and it could happen in real life. Sometimes it does. So the third example, the next sentence is, she'd returned back to the original mermaid that she escaped from in order to win the heart of the human that didn't even recognize who she was. Now, this is a problem. This is a big lesson about forsaking who you are as a person. Because on one level, she banished the real part, the pure essence of who she was as a person. She banished that. And this is why he couldn't recognize her. She destroyed the two most distinctive features that the prince fell in love with. This reminds me of Sylvester Stallone's wife. Okay, now Sylvester Stallone's wife is divorcing him after 25 years. She probably looks in the mirror and can't even recognize herself because she's had so many plastic surgeries. The Sylvester Stallone is basically there at the surgeon's office and says, give her big breasts, give her silicone lips, give her this, give her that. He wants her. I mean, he's completely changed her. And this is why she probably wants to divorce him. It's like, look, I don't even recognize myself. When I married you, I looked a certain way. Now I'm divorcing you. I can't see who I am. If you truly loved me as a person, you would have accepted who I am as an individual. Now, part of it was her fault, and I would say part of it is the mother, the woman's fault in some ways, because unfortunately, we don't think we're good enough. We don't think we're enough because society puts so much pressure onto us, projects so much pressure onto us to be perfect, to have the perfect body, to have the perfect legs, to have the perfect features. And this is why you have so many situations of anorexia nervosa and bulimia. And it's the same thing with men, especially with men that are obsessed with or feel that the only reason why somebody likes me is because I'm good looking. And a lot of men have this problem too. So with Sylvester Stallone, I'm really glad that his wife finally, finally, finally decides to divorce him after 25 years. You know, I mean, it's really interesting. You know, so many people have died, and so many dancers. I used to be in the dance profession. So many dancers have died because of not so much bulimia, but anorexia nervosa. I think it was there was a fake Carolyn Carter. She never felt she was good enough. She never accepted herself. So much self-loathing. She had anorexia nervosa and so much self-loathing that she just got thinner and thinner and thinner until she just starved herself to death. There was no way they could reverse the damage that she had done. Self-acceptance is key. Self-love is key. Trying to transform yourself and thinking that you are not enough for that person. Is it for that person or for anybody? I must confess, people, if you do not know how to love yourself, you will not know how to love anybody else, and it's going to be very difficult for you to accept the love of another human being. Let's take a look at the trigger points, shall we? The first one, I was triggered all the way through this, but I'm so glad that even though I was triggered all the way through the 3 points, that I'm less triggered now. The first trigger is about a self-hatred and dealing with my background with as a survivor of a narcissistic abusive mother, and also being in what you call a very narcissistic profession as a dancer. My mother hated my body, and she always made fun of my body and would say, well, those clothes look good on you because they don't show your shape, they don't show your body because you don't have a good body. What she was really doing, she was projecting what she felt about herself onto me. And I, of course, soaked it up like a sponge and, you know, internalized that self-hatred. And then I left home and I went to go into the profession as a dancer, which he was happy about because she wanted to be a dancer herself. So I became a dancer, and my body was unacceptable, even though I had a lot of talent. I was unable to really utilize the real skills and my instrument as a dancer because I had so much self-hatred. Now, I didn't have enough self-hatred to kill myself or to become an anorexic, but I had so much self-hatred that I deprived my natural being as an artist of being able to use the talents that I possessed. And there was in one situation where, as a black dancer, we were always made fun of, and when I was growing up, anyways, and dancing, that we were like monkeys. And I remember I was in class one day, and one of my teachers says, "Oh, who's been putting peanuts in the rosin box?" The rosin box is where dancers step on some sand to make so their feet don't so their slippers don't stick to the ground. And he said, "Melody, have you been putting peanuts in the rosin box?" So I said, "No." And I said, "I'm not a chimpanzee." And he says, "Oh, well, of course, of course you're not a chimpanzee." But he was being sarcastic, but he was also being nasty because they used to refer to me as a gorilla and as an ape sometimes when I was going to one of the top schools in Manhattan. I won't tell you the school, name of the school, but I experienced a lot of self-hatred with my instrument, and I never really used my full potential. The second one, but what's really great now, I feel so good in my body. I feel so good, and I don't get triggered anymore. The next one is Michael Jackson. Bless Michael Jackson's heart. An extraordinary artist that went from so many levels to self-hatred in 50 years of his career, to the point where he lightened his skin so much that he became white. He became like a colorless skeleton by the time he had died. It was so unfortunate. And nobody really recognized the disgusting and diabolical abuse that he went through as a young child from his father. Just absolutely terrible abuse. And it was so sad that he couldn't save himself, or nobody could save him. And that he was more than good enough. But I guess he was never told. He was never made to believe that he was good enough. And I've met so many Africans, men and women, that are in Barcelona, coming from my church, coming to my church, where I used to go to, that came over very dark brown skin. Some of them chocolate brown, some of them blue black brown. And by the time I was ready to leave 3 years later, they were the color of Beyonce. Nobody will accept me if I'm dark brown. So I must change who I am. I must completely change who I am to be accepted. This is another form of self-hatred, people. We don't have to do this. And the third one, I love the color of my skin. I'm an average brown, middle brown, tone brown, but I love the color of my skin. I don't get triggered about this, but I've seen the trigger points and how it hurts people. The last and final trigger is an illustration of Lady Diana Spencer. And guess what? Of course, her husband got coronated last week. Not many people, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people showed up, but people were not happy because Prince Charles is probably not going to be the best king. And furthermore, everybody would have liked to have seen Princess Diana instead of Camilla. But poor Princess Diana, she did everything. She was it was a lose-lose situation. He never, ever loved her as much as he tried to. He never loved her. He always loved Camilla. And she was bulimic for a long time in her marriage. She tried everything to get this man to love her. Guess what? She was good enough. She was always good enough. But if the person doesn't recognize you and doesn't recognize your worth, do not forsake who you are for anybody else. And that's what she did. She came from a very difficult childhood and a lot of abandonment. So a lot of people that experience a lot of abandonment in their life, being left behind, not being given the nurturing that they feel that they deserve, not being loved, being made to feel as though they're not worthy of love because the parent or the person that they feel that's supposed to love them doesn't know how to love themselves. This is why I said, if you don't know how to love yourself, it's going to be very difficult to love somebody else or to accept that love, even your own children. So, as much as compassion I had for Lady Diana Spencer, I felt really sad for her. But in the end, she died, and she died with a man that she truly loved. Not the only man that she truly loved, but a man that she truly loved. Okay, so that's the end of this episode, and a magical sacrifice from under the sea, and the little mermaid who sacrificed everything for love, but didn't realize that loving herself was the most important thing. So I'd just like to finish and say thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for viewing. And, please don't hesitate. Leave me a thumbs up if you liked the content. Leave a comment. It doesn't matter if it's a little negative or you didn't really like it. I'd like to know something. And please subscribe if you want to, because it doesn't cost you anything. And so that's the end of the episode. Take care, and I'll leave you with my famous expression or quote: healing is a lifelong gift we give ourselves, mind, body, and soul. Healing is a lifelong gift we give ourselves, mind, body, and soul. Goodbye.